This is Michael Popok, Legal AF After Dark. We just did a full deep dive into week one of the New York fraud case of the century against Donald Trump, in which the Attorney General, using her broad powers under a unique set of laws, is seeking not only to shut down Donald Trump and all the Trumpers and people affiliated with them from ever serving in business again in New York, stopping them from being able to borrow money, to transact real estate deals. She's also seeking a huge amount of fines in the form of disgorgement, taking ill-gotten gains away from somebody who only obtained them because of fraud. Ben Meiselas and me, co-founders and co-anchors of Legal AF right here on the MeidasTouch network, got up to our necks in analysis about what all the witnesses that were presented in week one by the New York Attorney General means about the momentum that she's trying to build concerning the narrative of her fraud case. That's why she started witness number one, the long-time, more than 12-year outside accountant working for a company called Meiselas, Donald Bender, who testified about being the personal accountant for Donald Trump, Alan Weisselberg, and all the other Trumpers, and then went in to admit to participating, or at least advising his client not to participate in fraud. After a couple of outside accountants went right to insiders, the two first insiders, and hostile witnesses because they're being sued themselves in the case. But that doesn't matter to the New York Attorney General, who brought in the testimony of Jeff McConney, the longtime financial controller, reporting to the chief financial officer. We talk about what happened there as Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, sets up her next shot, sets up her next week of testimony in a case that could go anywhere between 4 to 5 months. We're talking about 100 or more trial days. We've only seen 5 or 4.5 so far. Donald Trump's only seen 2.5. He didn't even make it to day 3 before he moved himself down to a safe space down in Florida and dismissed his case against Michael Cohen because he didn't want to sit for a sworn deposition. We talk about it all on Legal AF. Let's hit it.
I want to talk about what took place in New York this week. We had two major witnesses who testified this week. We had the outside accountant at the Meiselas firm who testified. We had Donald Trump's in-house former controller, Jeff McConney, testified, who went above and beyond the testimony that he had given at the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case where the Trump organization was convicted of over a dozen felony counts. This was some, like, Popok, I know we like the Perry Mason style moments on TV where a witness goes, "We did it. I did it. I committed the fraud. It went down." And let's start with the witnesses. And let's start with, before talking about Trump's ranting and raving like a lunatic and the fact that he can't control himself and he attacked everybody and got a gag order imposed on him and that just looked like who he is, a reprehensible human being. Like, these witnesses, it was Perry Mason moment after Perry Mason moment. You've got McConney going, "Yes, Eric Trump told me to inflate the valuations and deflate it. Yes, we committed fraud. Weisselberg told me to do fraud. Eric told me to do fraud." The testimony is that they all committed fraud. Popok, this was an explosive first week.
Yeah, it's a mastery of a trial process that we're watching in the hands of the Office of the Attorney General, doing a lot of things that would be a normal high wire act, where you're calling just to have a little breakout session for Legal AF Law School. It is the Attorney General's case in chief right now that we're in. We'll be in that case in chief where she has the burden for probably the next, I don't know, 60 or so, 60 trial days. We only saw week one of the trial, 5 days or so. It broke a little early for the long weekend, but there's going to be like another 95 trial days. And so she has to figure out with her legal team, Letitia James, how she's going to present her case and to get momentum, because you and I are trial lawyers, how to get momentum for your case. And usually you only call in your case in chief while you have the case witnesses that are friendly, that you control, that you know are going to testify because you've prepared them and you know what they're going to say. What you don't normally do is you don't call adverse witnesses, hostile witnesses, the defendants in the case, like Alan Weisselberg, the longtime disgraced, jailed, convicted CFO, chief financial officer, and basically his subordinate, the controller of the company, who reports to the chief financial officer. These are the two bag men and money men that are within the Trump organization and have been there for 40 to 50 years. Okay, so they are defendants in the case. But Letitia James's team called them as witnesses in their case in chief. Weisselberg will be going next week. McConney was brought in as a hostile witness, but the High Wire Act had a net underneath it for safety, because the Office of Attorney General knew what their testimony was going to be, because both of these gentlemen testified in the successful 17-count conviction of Trump Organization entities for tax fraud last year. People forget, I don't want anybody to get justice fatigue. He's not the Teflon Don. He's 91 felony indictments beyond that. He is losses at the E. Jean Carroll rape and defamation case. He is 17 counts of tax evasion conviction beyond being a Teflon Don, and other cases to come, including another E. Jean Carroll case that's going to start, and other civil fraud cases. So she had the benefit, even though her office didn't handle the case, the prosecution was handled by the Manhattan DA's office. She had the transcripts of the sworn statements under oath, the testimony of Jeff McConney and of Weisselberg. And so if they deviate from their testimony, and this, I said this in a hot take, this is how I used to discipline my witnesses at trial. I would just hold in my hands and I would just fold my arms like this, showing them that I had the transcript. I wouldn't even use it. I would just rock back and forth at the podium, because they knew. And then I would just, like, sometimes if they were testifying, I'd open it. So they saw me opening it. This is my theater, my trial theater. And I would just look and then, lower my glasses, and then they'd get back on track without me having to impeach them by saying, well, didn't you testify in front of Judge Merchan, in front of a jury? And didn't you admit to tax evasion on behalf of the Trump Organization? They didn't have to do that. And they didn't have to worry about getting access to those two witnesses, which I'm sure they did not have, because they are defendants in the civil fraud case. All they needed to do was call them up and make them, one way or the other, conform and track the testimony they already gave last year. But even with that, the lawyer handling it for the Office of Attorney General, there were surprise moments, because McConney, who got immunity to testify against the Trump Organization in the tax case, he just gave it up really quick in the first 2 hours of his testimony, admitting that he participated in tax fraud at Donald Trump's and Alan Weisselberg's behest. And in response to the question, what do you think would happen if you didn't commit the tax fraud? And he said, I probably would have been fired. And this is a guy who's waiting on a $500,000 severance package because he recently left the organization. I'm not sure he's getting that severance package anymore. Note to Jeff McConney. But the great thing about what we're watching is that she has decided, as the Attorney General, that there are certain elements that she's got to address and carry the burden on in her case in chief, namely intent. That is the big, when people ask me on the street, pardon me, which they do, about the case, they say, what's the difference between what happened last Tuesday with the summary judgment and the first count of the complaint against Donald Trump and all the Trumpers for fraud, and what they're trying right now? I said the biggest difference is intent. Last week, the judge was able to grant summary judgment to find persistent fraud over a at least 6-year period by all Trumps and Trump entities in New York business practice, but he didn't have to find, and the Attorney General didn't have to prove intent for that particular count. All the rest of the counts that are now up for trial for the next 95 or 100 days, insurance fraud, financial record fraud, financial statement fraud, and conspiracies around that, you have to prove intent if you're the attorney general. So to prove intent, what better way to do that than to pull your first insider witness, one of the bag men, the money men for Donald Trump, stick him on the stand and keep him on track with his prior testimony. Otherwise, they'll impeach him and show that he's perjuring himself. And McConney didn't want it. That was like the third rail. McConney didn't want anything to do with perjury or impeachment. They never had to do that with him. He just gave it up in a package right away. So that was a bombshell moment. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump didn't want to be there for that. Everyone's like, well, he left because first of all, he was never going to go for any real portion of this trial. It's a 100-day trial. If he shows up 5 more times, I'd be surprised. He made a statement. He made it a political campaign stop with all of his breaks, but he wasn't going to sit in the room. For people that thinks he's there to intimidate people, like he'll intimidate the judge, that backfired, and I don't think that's what he was doing. And you would think if he was going to intimidate somebody, it would be Jeff McConney, his longtime controller, who's testifying against him, but he decided not to even be in the room during that testimony. In fact, Chris Keiss, one of the lead trial lawyers, wasn't in the room. He was busy filing his appellate papers, and they left it to Alina Habba. Talk about turning it over to somebody who's herself trial incompetent. You know, my favorite moment, Ben, then I'll turn it back. My favorite moment is when they're cross-examining McConney, because he is, just another quick breakout. When you have your own witness, you can't lead your own witness. You have to ask them open-ended questions and let them testify, not yes or no, unless it's naturally a yes or no question. You can't do what we do, like you said, on Perry Mason or these law shows. Isn't it a fact that on November 5th you were? And, yes or no. That's cross. That's called leading. You can lead adverse witnesses when they get to the case on the defense, or if you call a hostile witness who's obviously hostile, you can start crossing. And if you're challenged, what I normally do is I'll start my cross by turning to the judge and say permission to treat the witness as hostile. And it'll be permission granted. And then you just go into cross. Now, they skipped that step because it was obvious to everyone but Alina Habba that when you call a defendant in the case into your case in chief, they are automatically, by their very nature, hostile. She had to stand up and say, they're leading the witness. And the judge was like, he's a defendant. He's obviously hostile. It's called cross. Try it sometime.
Alina Habba, you represent him.
I know, right? Who do you think this guy is?
He's supposed to be your client.
Yeah, he looks like Captain Kangaroo, but he is your client.
I mean, that's the thing. In all of the Trump filings, he's at least listed as somebody who's being represented by the Trump lawyer. So think about that when Alina Habba makes that objection. But I got to hand it to Alina Habba. I thought her cross-examination of Jeff McConney was her best performance yet to date. I'm just joking. She didn't she didn't. She was too afraid to cross-examine Jeff McConney, and there was no cross-examination of Jeff McConney. So Alan Weisselberg. So just think about that, everybody. Yeah. So Jeff McConney goes up there. He's a defendant. The New York Attorney General's office cross-examines him. They get him to admit, or he voluntarily admits, Eric Trump told me to commit fraud. Alan Weisselberg told me to commit fraud. It's basically all fraudulent, the enterprise. And
Trump would have fired me if I didn't do it.
Trump would have fired me. The Trump organization's a fraud. This is the guy who's worked there since like 1989. The guy's worked there his entire life. He's the controller of the Trump organization. Then the New York Attorney General sits down after that questioning. Then Judge Arthur Engoron goes to Alina Habba, who acts like she's so tough and that she's this expert trial lawyer, and she attacks the judge. Okay, Alina Habba, the witness is yours. We're not going to ask any questions right now. We reserve, Your Honor. We reserve. She sits there in front of that gamer laptop, which she claims is not her laptop or whatever, and she doesn't ask a single question. And then they go out, these MAGA Republicans, and then they whine, oh, but the judge is saying it's a fraudulent valuation and Mar-a-Lago's really worth this and blah, blah, blah. Your controller just testified and admitted to fraud. Your organization was convicted of felonies about a year ago. Your outside accountant said that you committed fraud. In your depositions, your chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, says he doesn't know generally accepting accounting principles despite certifying on all of the financials they conform with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. Donald Trump says that he doesn't know generally accepting accounting principles and that Eric Trump was the one who handled the statement of financial conditions. Eric Trump, on his deposition, states that he's never looked at the statement of financial conditions, and Don Jr. thought the lawyer for the New York Attorney General's office was flirting with him when she said, "You don't know anything about generally accepting accounting principles, do you?" He's like, I don't know. I don't know anything. I just know that they're generally accepted. I mean, that's who we're dealing with.
And wait. And their CFO went to jail for 6 months for tax evasion related to payments that he received under the table for which they did not declare it, for which both Bender, so back to Bender for a minute. We didn't talk about Don Bender. The mastery, the masterfulness of this momentum that Letitia James is creating. Because as trial lawyers, it's not just random selection, like who we're going to call first, who we're going to call second. It is a methodical thought process that every trial lawyer undergoes about who's my best set of witnesses. The fact that after Don Bender and another outside accountant, Don Bender being not only their 20-year outside accountant for the Trump organization, but personal accountant for Donald Trump, Alan Weisselberg, Matt Calamari, the head of security, his son, Alan Weisselberg's son. I mean, this guy knows everything, and testified that he told them in no uncertain terms, which McConney confirmed, that they couldn't do the bonus system because they were evading taxes criminally, putting their then general counsel's bar license at risk. This was Don Bender, who went on for a day and a half just dumping on Donald Trump and also reminding Judge Engoron, as if he needed reminding, because there's nobody in the state of New York who knows the facts about the Trump organization, Donald Trump, and tax fraud and civil fraud than the Judge Engoron, who has sat through dozens of evidentiary hearings, read and listened to every deposition transcript. I mean, I said on one of my hot takes, I practice in this courthouse and in this courtroom, and I've never had a judge who's more prepared for a summary judgment. My judges are half as much prepared, and summary judgment is still being considered. There's nobody that was better prepared than him. And so with the testimony of all of these people, and now linking it together, when you start with, think about the momentum, Ben. Bender comes on and says, yeah, I was with an organization called Meiselas that was an accounting firm, and we had to disclaim 12 years of our audits with the Trump organization because we found the information provided by them was unreliable. Okay, let's dive into that and tell me, who did you tell in the Trump organization that they were committing tax fraud potentially, and what was their response? And then go through Weisselberg, go through McConney with them, go through Trump himself. How about this signature? Is that Donald Trump's own signature certifying the information that went to you is accurate and truthful? Yes. Did you rely on that in order to prepare the accounting statements and the tax forms? I did. What did it turn out to be true? No, there were things that were left out that I wasn't told. And then let's call the next guy who's an outside accountant. And then let's take two insiders who were convicted or have immunity from prosecution, who were at the very heart of all financial decision-making along with Donald Trump. And let's go to them next, even though they're coming over from the other side of this case. And then this is only week one. Wait till the 60th day of her handling her case in chief. And there's one last thing, Ben, because we say this all the time, but I want our listeners and followers and watchers to understand this, and because you and I have been there. When the wooden doors of a courtroom close in the back, and you as a member of the bar are standing in the well of the courtroom, along with your counsel, along with the opponent, and you're putting on not the stuff that you're talking about at press conferences on the courthouse steps, but you're doing the painstaking, slow, and methodical presentation of evidence through witnesses, through documents, through transcripts, through videos, with a judge who is hanging on every word. I said in one of my videos, this is a bench trial. Normally, you put on a guy like McConney or somebody and you go through checks, and the jury starts to flatline after the fourth check. Is this a check that was deposited in the endorsement on the back? But with this judge, he's like, tell me more. Tell me more about where that check went. When you have that, in contrast to the shit show, that's outside with Donald Trump, there's a big difference. Because when you're in that courtroom watching the mastery of the presentation of evidence, right? This, as I said, this is like a boa constrictor who is just around its victim and squeezing the life out of it over the next 50 days. Donald Trump can jump up and down and throw food at the computer screen and do whatever, and attack staff members and get gagged and do whatever he wants. But that does not change the immutable facts that are being presented painstakingly by the lawyers and the judge that's going to decide it and the appellate court that's going to back him up. That's what we're watching. That's justice. What's going outside during breaks and tweeting and social media, that ain't it. That's running for office.
And we need legacy media to talk more about what's going on in the trial with these bombshell revelations than asking Donald Trump when he's outside attacking a prosecutor, hey, what are you having for lunch, Donald? I mean, like, you see the media doing that. It just makes me so glad that we created our own media network. And have you heard the term mansplaining before? I've coined a new term, MAGA-splaining, which is kind of a form of mansplaining. It's when these MAGA Republicans or MAGA cult followers try to explain away Donald Trump's fraud or everything that he does. That's called MAGA-splaining. So when they go, everybody knows that the fair market value is substantially higher than the tax appraisals, to which I respond, okay, let's accept your argument as true. Number one, Donald Trump was the one who gave the valuation at what it was. So it's not the judge saying Mar-a-Lago is valued at this. The judge is restating what Donald Trump claimed it was to pay lower taxes. Number one. Number two, Donald Trump's employees, his executives for the past 25, 30 years, say he engaged in fraud, MAGA-splainers. And number three, even if you told me fair market value is higher than tax assessments, fine. I'll agree with you there. Not 5,000% higher, okay? That doesn't exist. And you don't just get to make up square footage. You don't get to say it's this size when it's actually that size. And so, no, stop with the ridiculous MAGA-splaining and let's focus on what the actual evidence is to arrive at the truth.
Well, that's what we do on Legal AF every Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday, I do the show with Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Saturday, I do it with Ben Meiselas. It's sort of like our hot takes, except the two of us get together with our different and varied experience, collectively 75 years, trying cases just like the ones we're talking about in the courthouses that we're talking about, to bring you that kind of, at our fingertips, on the tip of our tongue type analysis on a weekly and daily and hourly basis. We do it in one place only, the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. We're almost at 2 million. Free subscribe, help them get to 2 million. The bigger that network is, this network is, the more your voice is heard and more content like this will be coming to you. If you like what you just saw, give it a thumbs up. Helps with the rating and the algorithms. Watch the whole clip. That also helps with the algorithms and the ratings. And until my next hot take and until my next Legal AF episode, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.